Sarah White here. Kevin Buck is here. Esther Jacobs, we'll get to that in a minute. She's not here. Mark Good here. Jane Ashworth is here. Lawson said he'd be here in about a half hour. Vera is here. I am here. Larry Albee is here. We are missing Mackenzie Jewett, Esther Jacobs, Jessica Bass. Jessica Bass and Esther Jacobs both emailed me and said they wouldn't be here.
Motion to excuse Jessica Bass and Esther.
Second, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and then Mackenzie Jewett, I was going to ask you, Kevin, you talk to her at all? She does not.
I've talked with her about every 2 weeks, but I haven't discussed this.
This?
So next time I see her.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, give her a nudge.
I know she's told me Thursday nights. I remember that a while ago.
Okay. 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 Len Lawson will be here in a bit. So I think with that, we can kick off. Well,
Michelle Mackenzie.
You know, you want to do that? I mean, I feel like this is the. I feel like the you know the members of the select board should be here. You know, there's 2 seats. They are, you know, sort of elected officials. They ought to be here. So if she can't be here, then you know, I don't know. I want to go. We can go through the process of kicking her off, but I feel like it's kind of needs to be worked out. If she's not going to, if she didn't show up for the next one, then we'll have a motion to ask the select board to put it on.
My guess is you're not going to get another. I would be very, very surprised if someone else stepped up. I know Howdy was here briefly.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to find Jamie or Eric time enough to do it.
Yeah.
I would be really surprised if either one of them could do it.
So the requirement or the expectation comes from the state or just our own?
Our own bylaws.
Bylaws, okay.
Oh, all right. Well,
I'll make a motion where to have the chairman contact Mackenzie and urge her to attend.
I'll second that.
Attend future meetings. How's that?
Well played.
so good. Do we need? I think we'll just really fine. Where are you? Where? Did you jump in?
Jordan.
Oh, Jordan Wolf. I'm sorry, I missed.
That's okay.
Now let's look at the minutes. Everyone had a chance to opportunity to review the minutes from December.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion for discussion. Make a motion to include only the call to order, the roll call, motions and votes taken, and the adjournment for the minutes for approval. And I can explain why I feel that way in a minute.
I'll second it for the sake of discussion.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff here. Okay. Yep. Go. Share.
Okay, and the reason is, and first of all, I appreciate Jane taking these exhaustive minutes here, okay? And first of all, legally, we do not have to provide such detail in the minutes. We basically have to just include what I outlined, okay? My concern is it gets into a lot of detail here and there are question marks, like you find things, question marks, asterisks and things like that, which are just to me confusing for the record. And I really can't approve these minutes as written. Sorry, Jane.
Okay, so maybe we can do a do-over on the minutes.
Well, that's what I think the cleanest way is just do it the way I say, instead of going through point by point. Saying,
Mark's way of the highway.
Just do it the way I said.
just do it the way I say, everything will be fine.
Well, you know what? I'm going to we will table the minutes.
I didn't want to table them. My motion was to just include those things.
Okay, so then you want to
That to amend it to include
Amend it
those
to
things.
include
That better way to phrase it.
Okay, do we have a second?
The
We already have
notes-
a second.
But the notes are how maybe on a separate.
We could discuss all night what we can include in here,
Well, you got
but
the
going
recording.
back, I can't approve these minutes with the question marks and brings in, what does that even mean?
All in favor?
Was it seconded? I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was second. Yeah,
We're not in favor?
No, I think it's, what she did was that she, got it down on what we're supposed to do.
Well, but that wouldn't be in minutes, that would be.
It's
Yeah, that's more, that's more notes, that's more.
Yeah,
meeting notes.
actually, that raised a question in my mind, I was tasked with doing something, and how does that procedurally work its way back into the system?
Well, you send an email like everyone else did, the
Right.
folks here with what you're supposed to do.
The email's about to be sent.
I didn't send an email, but
Or whatever you want to do.
yeah. there
Well,
it
I
is.
sent an email to the three people you said.
Vote on the table.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's a vote on the table.
Yeah, and what's do we have one against, is that?
I'll change my vote for it, but I just, she was trying to be helpful.
No, I understand,
It's not
clarity, and I'm fully aware, and it's nothing against Jane, but I mean, there are questions here, what was actually, why are there question marks?
Means I didn't know who.
Right, and so there's, the minutes aren't really
Yeah, you
accurate.
couldn't really approve it. So, as passed as amended. So now, I think we can now move on to the business portion of the meeting. Perfect. Ben?
So they were, minutes are passed as I amend them, nobody's gonna look at them again?
That's correct.
Okay.
Although, Mark and I are happy to look at them, but yeah. That's how that-
I think it was amended to just only include those details. I think what happens is,
It was amended to include what we legally have to do, okay, as far as I'm concerned.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Just that I will agree with the fact that I needed those detailed notes. I know that's not the vote. I know that, but you'll still, if you take notes, you will still get a copy of them in detail. Is
The
that
normal secretary is Jessica Bass, Jane just filled in.
right? Whoever.
So it's normally not the secretary's job at a meeting to take notes for the members. Members of a board or any kind of committee want notes to remind themselves. They would take the notes themselves.
Right.
Or you
Plus, a
could-
video exists as well
Or
of
you
the
can watch
meeting,
the
so yeah, anybody can watch the meeting to.
The minutes are really meant to just record what's legally required. Who was there? What's the roll call? Were the last minutes approved? What are the actions taken? What were the votes on those actions? And that's really it. You might see a few bullet points of discussion on particularly important items, but generally speaking, no. I mean, I've seen minutes from large organizations, they're a page. It's totally one page.
Seen minutes
Huge
from municipal business all throughout this county, and I've never seen it.
Which is fine. It's fine. I've seen, it's fine.
Yeah.
We will just, remove that detail and regular business. Future land use mapping workshop.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is the number one thing to talk about this evening. We've been working toward a second community meeting. We had a meeting back in October in that room where people from the community came in, and there was some food and people went through some exercises, and that was really valuable. The result of that work was the draft vision statement that we've looked at in October, well, I should say really in November and December. And we've taken that vision statement and we have thought about how to translate that to a map. How do we implement that vision? What does it look like on the ground? And then what are the implications for policy for the next 10 or 15 years? So to that end, we had put a stake in the ground for February 2nd. That was the date we picked at the December meeting with a snow date, looking at my calendar, of February 9th. Not a lot of snow dates needed to be used so far this winter, but it kind of made sense to do that. So that's where we left things in December. And our hope is that this evening we can talk a little bit about the format of that event. And Jesse also gave me a preview that we might want to think about as an alternative date as well. And I'm not sure if that's something we're ready to get into or where you want to start with that, Brett.
February 9th, I was in the town office today. That's a Board of Appeals meeting. So this room will be in use, the snow date. So that's something to consider. Hopefully we won't need it.
So we've been preparing, and this is what we wanted to talk a little bit about, to have a good, successful event on February 2nd. From a technical standpoint, I think we can hold a good event. Jesse, through some email communication over the last couple of days, said that there may be some concerns, and I don't know if these were directly his concerns or concerns represented to him from members of this group or the community about maybe not having enough time to publicize an event on February 2nd, which is exactly 2 weeks from tonight. He did mention the ZBA meeting on the 9th and had suggested that the group might consider February 16th as a future land use workshop. So I think it's definitely worth a little bit of discussion before we jump into the nuts and bolts of the workshop itself. I think we could hold a good workshop, but if the concern is about awareness and publicity and those kinds of concerns, I think with 2 weeks ahead of the meeting, that's definitely a valid discussion point.
I know there was discussion, Mark, about getting.
I sent a brief into the paper, whether it made it in this week or not, saying what information I had, which was we're holding this meeting on land use issues right here in this building on February 2nd, and from blah, 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 the times and snow date being whatever. So it's already been advertised unless for some reason you get in the paper. I haven't seen today.
So we will know that tomorrow. Right?
Today is Thursday, so the paper is out.
MD, my MD out there.
Yeah.
I got a paywall, so I actually get it at God, so I don't try to get online.
That's okay. I don't get paid by them anymore, so that's fine. You get it wherever you want.
So what I was saying is I can't look right now. Because if they've done it, then I think,
Yeah,
the horse
that's,
is
well,
left
I mean,
behind.
that's what the direction I got from
Yeah,
you,
right.
Ben, and
Yeah,
from
yeah.
you, Brett. So that's what I did.
I didn't realize that they were concerned about time.
I think 2 weeks is enough.
I
don't think anyone's
I
going
think
to
so
put
too. I
anything
mean,
further after this anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can we get some papers, some brochures or whatever? and
I
flyers
think-
in the-
I think Ben kind of, at least where I said, I'm curious to hear what other people said, but yeah, there were some efforts made to get it in the paper, for today. If that happened, then I think end of discussion. We're gonna go, because it would be even worse to kind of say, oh, sorry.
Yes, I
And
agree.
I do think that 2 weeks is enough notice. There are other things we can do to publicize it as well, post it.
I'll put something up, get something up on the website, that sort of thing. But I was
If
hoping,
we didn't make the paper this week, then I think we probably should think about hitting the pause button. Because then, I don't know, like, if
You would get it in next week.
right, but then we'll only have, you really.
who has access through the paywall?
Yeah. James,
I don't.
I don't either.
It'd probably be in the brief, try page 2 and 3. As a brief.
Yeah.
That's what I asked them to do, but you never know.
We wrote a little squid.
Yeah.
Constituents, Narcan training.
Last week, I did Narcan training article last week.
They haven't, might not have updated the.
Yeah.
Is that this week's paper?
Let me see.
James under pressure.
Yeah, it's good looking at it on the phone.
I'm checking the website as we speak as well. Is there a certain,
Volunteer cemetery on the front page. Is that last week?
No.
Yeah, because last week wasn't the
And
the
woman
swim or
rescued
something.
Gator who fell through
No,
tonight.
that's news, that's news.
Okay.
Okay, the oldest resident is turning 100.
Everybody can, that's news.
But it could be somewhere else, even if it isn't in there as a brief.
Plan February 2nd.
Okay, there it is.
So it's in the paper, so we're go, we are go.
It's gotta be true then.
I sent graphics
I made
to,
it up. It's true, right?
I sent graphics to Jesse today that could be printed as flyers that hang in different places around town, and a graphic that could be put on the town's website or social media that would help. Again, we were under, shooting for that February 2nd meeting, but I want to make sure that we do have an opportunity to make people aware of this and have every chance to get people in the room.
Yeah, I mean, it hit this week's paper, so it'll be in the paper, and I can stop by the town office tomorrow and get whatever you sent to Jesse, print some copies, and if you just post them in the post offices and stuff on the bulletin board. there.
Jesse will do that.
He'll do
Goes
that?
around and does it for all of me.
Okay, okay.
Jesse didn't have the flyers when I talked to him today.
Right, but he may have sent it after you talked.
I think he just sent it.
But he said he just did.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we're good, so.
I can try to get something else in the paper, and I'll definitely get something up on the website, town
Yeah,
website.
that's from Justin.
Don't quote me on that.
We gotta get the bat signal in the sky somehow.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's good, and that's 5:30 to 7:30. So it will be more formal than the last workshop we had, which everybody may recall is just kind of an open house. People could kind of drop in, come when you please, and stay as long as you want. This one would have a start time and a presentation where we would share some of what we heard from the surveys, share some results from the visioning workshop, and share that vision statement, and use that all to set up that discussion around future land use. What does all of that mean for the future of the community? And so the presentation would maybe be 30 minutes or so out of the 2 hours, maybe 40 minutes. And then it would go into some structured workstations. So the original vision for that was we were going to draft 3 land use scenarios based on ways we could implement that vision statement. They'd be realistic, they would be plausible, they would be different from each other in subtle ways, depending on which portions of the vision statement they were implementing. And that would give people a chance to say, this is what I like about scenario 1, this is what I like about scenario 2. And no matter what happens, let's not do any of this from scenario 3, for example. So part of that presentation would be instructions around, you're not voting for a single scenario. You're not, there's not going to be a winner. But what we want to do is take the best pieces from each one of those scenarios that we present and take them and kind of group them together, amalgamate them into a single draft land use map that would then be presented for discussion to the committee. And we've done that in a number of towns, and happy to discuss the scenarios themselves in a bit more detail. We've got 4, and we can narrow it down to 3, I think, is a manageable number. But there was an alternative presented last week. We were running these draft scenarios by the planners at the Musson Group, who we're working with on this project, as you may recall. And there were really 4 elements. I'll give you a preview of these scenarios. And the elements were around a village focus, so that future growth and development would be focused on the existing village areas. Another scenario is focused on Route 102 and that triangle. near the town office is there were a number of comments about a new downtown and developing that as a place for community. The third scenario is really less focused on growth in those existing kind of built up areas and prioritizing places for quiet country living, places for primarily residential development off of side roads on the east side of 102, kind of away from the water. And then the fourth scenario was around coastal access and natural resource protection. So that one, unlike the others, was really about not where growth should go, but where are the places that are really important to protect? And where do we want to make sure that growth does not happen or growth is very limited in the future? So we were discussing these scenarios and how we might present them and what it might mean for mapping work and those kinds of things. And Noel had suggested an alternative to fully fleshing out these scenarios with maps and about a page of narrative for each one, and say, as an alternative to that, we could say do some individual maps, print off an 11 by 17 map for everybody who comes to the meeting, or break out into smaller table work where 4 or 5 people might get around a table and work on a map together, and say, you come up with your own map for what you think the future land use for Tremont should be, but make sure that your map incorporates those 4 ingredients. No matter what you do for a map, there should be a place for quiet country living. There should be a place for enhanced resource protection and coastal access. Show us on the map where you think the village growth would be appropriate, either within existing areas or expanding village areas. And that's a little different from what we had originally presented. So I wanted to kind of weigh the pros and cons of those approaches with this group. One, the original proposal where we developed these scenarios, we fully fleshed them out and asked people to kind of critique them and say what they like and what they don't like about each one, and kind of have those discussions with members of the committee, members of the planning team, and among themselves. The other is more of a, just tell us what you think it should be, and then we'll take all of those maps. So instead of taking comments on 4 different scenarios, we're going to take, 20 or 40 different individual maps and try and find the common themes among them. So I think the first one, the original, is a little more work up front to present those scenarios to the community. And then you can get feedback on those scenarios. The second is, I think, maybe a little more work on the back end after the meeting, because you're kind of leaving it more wide open when you go into the session. We again used both approaches. I think they both can work, and I just wanted to either verify that original approach that we laid out is still something that would be interesting and useful for the group, or if you thought that an alternative might be a little less complex and give people a chance to just get their hands on some markers and tell us what they think directly. So that's kind of the overview. I'd be happy to kind of dive into the details of either one, or we can talk more maybe about the scenarios if that would help folks make up their mind. But I would be interested in board comments or thoughts at this point.
I just have a question. I don't know I'm just curious to hear people here. When you say growth, it's kind of a loaded. I don't know what that means. If you mean like commercial growth or residential growth, or is that when you say growth?
Yeah. So I will sometimes use those terms because that's what the state uses when they look at a future land use plan. And again, all of this work is in support of the future land use plan that's going to be in the final planning document. The state looks for growth areas, meaning where will the town incentivize, encourage, or direct growth, new development, whether it's commercial or residential or a mix of both in the future. They look for rural areas, which are essentially the opposite of that, places that you want to disincentivize or discourage growth or limit the impacts of growth. They also very commonly will include things like transition areas, which are the places in between. I think of those as the places that have some development today. You might think of a stretch of 102, where there's some houses and home-based occupations, but it might not be a place you want to see a lot more development in the future. Kind of what's there is not rural, it's not undeveloped, but you don't necessarily want to encourage more growth there. So that might be a transition area where it's just kind of the status quo as opposed to encouraging, directing growth, or limiting or disincentivizing growth. And then there's a couple sub flavors of like critical resource areas, and you can talk about a growth area as maybe a mixed use growth area if it's in a village, or a residential growth area, those kinds of things. But it's essentially, I think where it comes down to, Brett, is what are the places that are going to look different? What are the places where you might expect to see more either buildings or activity in the future? And those would kind of be analogous with the state's idea of a growth area. And where will the places be that are going to be quiet places to either enjoy nature, or the places that you might expect to see some natural resource-based economy uses?
So I'll kick off a couple thoughts. I'll see if you like. I mean, to me, village focus, I don't know what that means either, because like trying to think of the village on the backside, it's like West Tremont. I mean, to me, the villages are just they're tracts of land that are with boundaries that village focus basically means the whole thing. Okay. It's everything.
Tremont is the village, you're
Right.
saying,
Yeah, I mean-
instead of being made up of individual villages. So
Right, because you just, each village is just a part of Tremont, and they're, to me, in some of the villages, I guess when I drive through, when I go on the backside, it's not even, like a church, I mean, it's not. When I think about growth, I think about the triangle, and I think about around the heart. I mean, those to me are the areas where I could see where I could understand that. Because to me, this feels like if you're ever going to choose a center of town, this would probably be it. I would think either that or over by the post office and the fire department. I think the fire department's coming over here.
yeah.
And so that post office becomes just like one of the small village post offices like in Bernard or out there. To me, it's the growth would be around here, the triangle, which, if you're a landowner over there, the triangle, maybe you might not like that, I don't know. And then around the harbor, because that's where, you have, used to be a lumber yard, but now it's like a restaurant, and I have some car store there. It's a storage facility, so I could see stuff going on there because it already is. So, which is actually not on, I guess it's the closest thing to that is a Route 102 focus, yes.
I saw a paper being passed around. I had emailed over on Friday
Yeah.
a paragraph or two description for each one of them. Is that what folks are looking at?
That's what we're looking at. Yeah, we those are printed off, yeah.
Great.
So I'll stop and welcome Lawson. Hi guys. Let the record reflect that Lawson Wilson has joined the meeting. And we were going through the format, and talking about the sort of 4 bucket scenario, and then the other scenario in the paragraph below. And just I had asked, what does growth even mean? Kind of means business growth, and then we were talking about, well, can you frame that business growth within the context of one of these, strategies or scenarios. And a village, I said, well, I don't know what that means because we're just a collection of villages, it's everything. And then like Bass Harbor Village, I would say, kind of has a downtown, I guess, kind of by like the catch, maybe down there, I don't know, Bernard, by Thurston's. But you get out in some of the other villages and I don't.
But historically, all those villages were their own, unique communities
Yeah.
anyway, and a store and all that stuff, and as
But
When
I
cars
I
became-
can't see
then you should be right.
incentivizing growth, like over, trying to
Well, think
what-
about zoning too. I mean, there's sections in town that, you can't have business growth right now.
I kind of read that a little differently, Brad. Instead of the actual main villages here, I think of that as Tremont having a village center.
A village
A
center.
town center might be a better way
Yeah.
to say it.
Rather than all,
So
Like I say, I don't-
it's encouraging each village to have its own town center.
no, I think one for the town of Tremont,
Okay.
which again, I think is probably where we're not in the middle of it, we're pretty close.
This is it right here.
Yeah.
Despite water issues.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there's some zoning issues here. too.
Contaminated water.
It's like, it's brownfield.
Yeah. It's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live here.
So I think when we had sketched this out, we were thinking about almost independent. Bass Harbor would have its area associated with, Bernard would have an area, Seal Cove would have an area. And I think that's a fine place for discussion. And what I just heard you say with Kevin, I think, right, about maybe it's this town center would include maybe Bernard and Bass Harbor and the Triangle kind of all together. That's an interesting idea. Is Seal Cove any kind of village or any kind of place that would be
No, I mean, you got
encouraging,
the.
incentivizing?
Post office and the fish market.
You got, you got
Not
a fish.
anymore, but it was at the time.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
Some of those towns had little stores and things like that at one time, schools, yeah.
But look, I
Honestly,
mean, there is resistance to even having like campgrounds, in those areas. So I can't, it's suggesting that they start building, businesses in those
Right,
villages.
yeah.
I mean, that would not, I think, I don't know how that would go.
I think part of the problem is too, I don't think we have enough population
They
to
even do
support
it.
multiple business centers, commercial centers. I mean, this is a town of 1,600 plus a few people. I mean,
Yep.
it's,
I think the growth area, Bernard, Bass Harbor, around the harbor
Yeah.
and the triangle.
yeah. And basically, this is almost included in circling
That's
around the
right.
harbor.
Right.
So,
Which is a big advantage, really.
You could say that, but there is a lot of land over in Seal Cove that's business residential. Well, that's.
Well, that raises the question whether it remains business residential.
That's what I was thinking too. It's a gray area. I mean, right down the road for me is a garage with major, construction equipment, behind on Kellytown Road, so.
Is, what is it, light commercial?
It's light commercial.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
But
Well,
they
it's not a
could be
paper mill.
historically
Right.
allowed.
Well, I think almost everyone that's had their hands in it understands that this residential business zone, which is basically half the town, is problematic as hell. I mean, and the issues, the
Depends on which
examples.
side of
that
the
you
vehicle
give.
you're on.
Well, but even so, it's a problem. I mean, you guys have been dealing with that for years now.
But it was the will of the town back when it was voted in.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I don't know if that will change, Larry, but, and again, maybe I think that's something that should be mentioned. We had a past town manager I've had conversations with a lot about Harbor Drive going down here. It's all business residential, almost right to the lighthouse.
Really?
The only thing that's not residential in there, I think, is one church, until you get almost to the lighthouse, and then there's a pit. But I mean, it's all business, all residential. And again, that's where at least one of these campground issues is showing up in that zone, or partially in that zone.
And Larry, Silk Cove is not residential business. You go look at the pink there.
It is on my road.
I don't know
Is that on where
exactly
you
where
live?
the Cape Road. It's not on the Cape Road at all.
No, it's not.
It
The
is
Silk
on
Cove
the-
Road.
Yeah, that's,
It is on the end of Kellytown. That's in
Right,
that.
At the end of the Kelly Town, yes.
Yeah,
That's
that's
where
all up in Silk Cove Road.
But I think that is West Tremont, not Silk Cove.
It's a little post office. It's South
Okay,
Park.
So-
maybe we need to come back, it's approved.
One of the things, and I know there's a lot of side conversations and interesting stuff happening, but one of the things when we look at this is we like to look at where the buildings are, and we look at where the roads and activity are. We don't look at parcel maps, and we don't look at the zoning map. We have the zoning map, but I like to set that aside so that we can think about, like, what would this town look like, starting from where we are today, what should it look like? And there are very natural implementation steps that come out of this that, usually the number one is, review the existing zoning and make updates to the existing zoning or change the zoning boundaries or those kinds of things to help implement the vision. So the zoning gets established at some point in the past based on the needs of the town. And I think, in one sense, this effort is a chance to kind of test that and reaffirm it or update the needs of the town. So based on this vision, how much has it changed? And based on, things that have happened in the last 10 or 15 years, what do we need to be thinking about for the future? So I think that the existing zoning map is going to be obviously very important. It's the rules for how things happen today. But I think this group might be a bit of a challenge to kind of take a step back and say, let's not think so much about what the rules are today, but what kind of place do we want this to be? And then think about what do the rules need to be to make that happen? So I think that we've heard loud and clear. I think your comment about the existing residential business zone is well taken. We've heard that from other folks over time, and there could very well be some recommendations about what is that, how do we update that in the future to meet Tremont's needs? And I don't want to get too deep into that right yet, but I think that should be on the table. Zoning isn't easy to change, but it's an important piece of it. So those are all good comments about the harbor and about where activity's happening.
Well, with that comment, I really like option 2 of what you said for the meeting on the 2nd and how we would go about approaching it and organizing it. So letting the attendees have their voice in how they see the town growing and where they see these 4 options being placed on the map.
Okay.
I think that sums up my thoughts pretty well too.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I circle, she was saying that circle a second. It's kind of, it's less structured, but it's still, it sounds like you're gonna highlight some aspects of those 4. So I guess I would call them sort of ways of
Yeah.
doing.
I mean, on one hand, I like the scenarios. That's what we had proposed. I like it from the standpoint of holding up maybe a different kind of mirror, a different future. But the important thing about those is they have to be realistic enough where people don't just laugh them off or not take them serious or say, oh, that'll never happen here. The other part is, you need to be careful when you develop them so that you're not saying, these are your 4 choices that we're presenting you from Cumberland County on how Tremont should look in 20 years. So I think that if we have that option of, hey, welcome to the future land use workshop. Here's a map that's basically an outline of the town with some roads on it and enough other information that people can kind of orient themselves as a little bit of a worksheet. I do like the idea of still having some like maybe group activities so that people do have some conversations and you might have some alternative views presented. So it's not just someone coming in and saying what they think 100%. You get a little bit of that engagement and a little bit of the community interaction. But I think that option that is not the predetermined scenarios for you to critique and pick the best aspects of might be more appropriate. And that's based, I'm hearing that from folks and you can confirm that. Noel had kind of given me the first inclination that, you might have, a little resistance or some pushback if you're talking about like, you can grow here or you can grow here, but all of these choices, like you're gonna grow, and this is where, we're gonna change these places in town. So I think as long as we can have a little bit of structure to that work and still let people do their own and present their own thoughts, knowing that, you've got these ingredients, and then the ingredients in Tremont that we've heard from the visioning work and from the surveys are, a place, that's quiet. You can live in quiet solitude out in the woods if you want. You can find a job in town where you might, shop for day-to-day goods, those kinds of things. Where would you find those ingredients in Tremont in the future? So presenting those basic, those ingredients or elements of the scenarios rather than the fully formed scenarios for people to react to, I think is kind of where the conversation is taking us. I see Brett nodding. It's a little hard for me to read the room from Zoom, but I just wanted to confirm that. That's where it feels like this is going. And I've heard a couple people say that. I don't know if, this is just kind of consensus, but we're happy to develop that approach.
I think that makes sense personally. I mean, I agree with the earlier comments. I think, when you present people with kind of 4 buckets, you sort of, you define what you got to be very careful to make sure they're broad enough in scope to include everybody's perspective. Otherwise, someone's going to feel like they're being boxed in and they're not, whatever's on the menu isn't what they want to talk about, or doesn't include their issue or their thoughts. It's funny, when I was reading these, I was thinking, well, these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. You could, Route 102 focus in country living, and coastal access. At least the titles, without reading the text, it all felt like that we should try to do all of that. And so I think it needs more development. I think the more, the last more informal workshop was kind of funny. We definitely got some funny comments. And I think that I think keeping it open and presenting, laying these out as ways of thinking about it, and then seeing what we get for feedback is probably the way to go. Is anyone? I know I'm just kind of repeating.
Yeah, the second option seems to be the way to go. You want a motion to that effect?
Sure.
Let's make a motion that we go for the second option as presented by our planners for our February 2nd land use workshop.
Second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? There you go.
All right, that sounds great. And I will work to keep you in the loop as that develops, but I envision that the scenario, formal scenario development the work we've done on that will help inform the exercise that we're going to ask people to do. I think that we're still going to have that presentation and a bit of information sharing up front, and then some instructions for folks as we move into that more interactive session. But I foresee, some breakout tables set up in that room that you're in with some flip charts. It might require a few more folks. So I'll do a head count here and at the Musson Group to see if we can get some table facilitators. But I think we've also got some pretty capable folks who might volunteer to just keep notes at a table for us on the committee. And that way we can make sure that we record everything that's happening at the tables. So often when we do a workshop like that, it'll also include a little bit of kind of an adjournment from the workshop tables, which might be about a 45-minute exercise in itself, where we just do one last little bit of presentation, which might be going into more detail on the survey, for example. And then while that's happening, folks who are at the tables as a recorder or facilitator can kind of put their thoughts and notes together and have a little bit of a report back at the very end, because it's really interesting to hear what each of the other tables were thinking, to see where they might be different or where the common themes start to arise. So people, before they leave, they can get a sense of some of the work that had happened that night. So I will update an agenda for the February 2nd meeting and get that back out to folks by Monday, so that members of the committee, maybe I can send it to Brett and it can get circulated around, or maybe Brett can make an administrative decision that, yes, this agenda looks good, but that'll be the direction that we take when we shape that up.
I just wanted to point out the snow date, the conflict. If we're going to have a snow date, we need to choose another one.
You don't think that meeting will last very long, do you?
Appeals board.
Just kidding, Chris.
Okay,
No comment. How's that?
well, do you think we should resolve that now? The snow day?
Well, if you want to get something up on the town website and maybe something else in the paper, it would be good to mention the actual snow date if we choose to have one.
Is there a conflict for having it the following Tuesday? That's
The 6th
That's
is
what I'm
select
wondering. Is that a
board.
planning board or
The 6th is select board.
select board?
That's a Monday, right?
I'm sorry, you're right. So the 7th is open. I was wrong there. The 7th is,
Yeah, that's
If you guys don't
About
have
the
any
10th.
planning board
It's
stuff,
on the
there isn't anything
Friday.
else.
The
7th and the 10th of 10th of Friday.
7th, 8th, 9th. I
The
should
9th
say.
is the problem, is the conflict. That's
The 9th is the town.
No, I'm close.
Appeals board.
The only thing on the town calendar is the Board of Appeals on the 9th.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying about those other like regularly scheduled things.
We could make it the 4th, right? No, excuse me. What day is
Second.
that?
The 2nd is a Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Second is a Thursday.
That's the next Tuesday.
Why not do the 8th
Seven.
Wednesday? That's 6 days. It's not a Friday evening when people are busy.
I think the 7th or the 8th seems like good.
I will not be here, but it's fine with me. I'll be in Sacramento.
Yeah, there's no benefit in it.
So what is it?
Anybody care?
Make motion.
7th?
7th.
7th. Does that work for our planners?
It's open on our side, yes.
All right. Thanks.
we can verify that with Jesse.
We won't need it. It's not going to snow anyway.
That's right. Yeah. That might be changing now. Might be winter after all. Okay.
Nobody made a motion.
We should, let's, want to do it, so it's in the minutes, yeah.
I'll make a motion to change the snow date from February 9th to February 7th. Same time, same place, same.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, cool.
That's great. Is there anything else that this group can think of that we might need to discuss related to that workshop or logistics for the workshop before we move on? I think it's less important for like food, for example, at this shorter meeting where, you know, we're gonna have more structure and not just kind of a drop in.
Can you send us like a list of what you might require to have set up here so we can get ahead of that?
Yes.
Did we already talk about?
Yeah. Not about a mailing that you.
We do not have a mailing? Do we want to do a mailing? We had talked about doing that.
We can get out before then.
We talked about it. I think it's too late now.
We do?
I don't know.
Thank
Can
Why do you say
the
that?
town office make it work?
Yes, I think that they can, I mean, based on the conversation we had for our November, the last workshop we had? December?
I think our original visioning workshop was October 4th.
October 4th. We had talked about doing a mailing for that and decided not to. But then the logistics behind it were pretty simple on our end because Jesse would do it all. And I think we
Katie would do it all.
our wonderful staff upstairs would do it all.
This is our biggest meeting, our biggest public meeting.
Yeah, and so assuming they're in the office tomorrow, then why don't I volunteer to talk to them about a mailing?
Okay.
And Ben, we would just need we probably need you guys to design it. You already did,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, we've got,
It's a poster,
Well,
not a mailing.
it's
Yeah, that's
draft.
Okay,
I can show you what we've put together.
sorry.
It's essentially a flyer, something that's meant to be posted up in like a town office, post office, convenience
Yeah.
store.
Could you
those
turn-
kinds of things.
Could you put some of that language into a 5x7 format that the town could then mail out?
You go to
Yeah.
front and back, text on the back.
Yeah.
This is just a one-sided thing. It's meant to hang up on
Yeah,
all.
right. That's 8.5x11. That works great.
Yep.
I guess I'm asking you to also do a 5x7, two-sided for.
Great. I think
Oh,
what
you can just fold that in half and mail it.
I think that would be the key question, Lawson, is not, you know, yeah, we want to have the basics and a little bit of a description about what this is, and we can fit that on a mailer. You know, I would want to know, does the town office have the capability to print the postcards, or do we need to send those to a shop to get printed?
Yep. All right, so I'll volunteer to start a thread with Ben, Sam, and Jesse and myself to coordinate a mailing to go out.
I'll second the volunteering for that.
I think if, you know, realistically, if that enters the postal system midweek, people would probably be getting that the end of next week or early that week of the event itself. So it might be a reminder, you know, sometimes maybe 2 or 3 to 5 days ahead, which is not a bad thing. But if it goes much beyond that, you start to run into, boy, I wish I got this yesterday. This thing's talking about the event that already happened.
Yep.
They'd have to go first class is the other thing.
Right.
But I do agree that this is, should be an event that people come and really feel like they've got an opportunity to help shape this effort and the recommendations and kind of where it goes. I think that this is still a process that's, relying on community input, as opposed to, the next meeting after this is going to be presenting a draft plan where it's, a little more solidified and fully baked. So I think that, people do need to hear that this is something that they can, help shape at this point.
Where are we in the agenda?
We're down to inventory chapter progress.
Okay.
Yeah, so we made it through the most important part of the agenda, which is the discussion that we wanted to have, I wanted to have around that future land use mapping workshop. The next item on the agenda is the inventory chapter progress update. And this is on the agenda following up that meeting we had in December. It went long, but it was very productive. And there's been some follow-up since that meeting. So I'd be happy to turn it over to Sam. And then if people have things that they wanted to continue to follow up on and provide, some info or had questions on, that'd be appropriate too. So Sam, why don't you let us know what's happened with the chapter since that meeting and who you've heard from and kind of where things are with that.
Yeah, so can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've received a lot of comments from Sarah about trails in Tremont and in Acadia. I've also just received comments from Kevin on parking specifications and usage and capacity, as well as information on energy infrastructure and then number of bed and breakfasts. So still waiting on a couple of things. In marine resources, I haven't yet heard back from the harbor master. I know he was going to look into that chapter.
Today, finished it today.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Try to.
And then for transportation, the Island Explorer stops, and then there was a comment on sustainability committee knowing number of electric vehicle charging stations and information on that. And then public facilities, some info on broadband, and then fire equipment data on conditions of fire apparatus. And then for population.
The fire department had a meeting last night. You're supposed to get that information to me soon.
Oh, it's supposed to be, I couldn't quite hear what you said.
Fire department, equipment.
Yeah.
They had a
Yep.
meeting last night. You're supposed to get that information to me soon.
Okay, great. And then, yeah, the last thing is the number of campsites, or number of current campsites, and then the increase in seasonal residents, checking that accuracy.
As far as the campsites are concerned, we have one campground that's been approved, but construction hasn't begun yet. That has 45 sites. Another related one with 8 yurts. Bass Harbor Campground, 103. Whiteside Campground, 38. So for a total of 194, although I'm going to guess it's probably closer than 200 or so, because who knows whether there's been a few added at Bass Harbor and Whiteside that the town doesn't know about.
Okay. Thank you.
Records.
Sam, do you just need to know the Island Explorer locations? Bus locations?
The stops, the exact stops.
Okay, I can get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, do you think you or Gordon or who would be the right person to have to write something about the EV charging station?
I'm working on that currently.
Okay, great.
So I guess that would be me. I'm having a conversation.
Okay.
We've got,
But there's no locations that have been chosen, right?
we're working. on it.
And also you would probably have to go through planning board approval, correct?
I don't know.
Talking about the ones that are already here, right?
There's one out here, that's it.
There's only one public one, so that's easy.
One sentence.
We're about 45 feet.
I think we had said someone was going to email Jesse about the seasonal housing Airbnbs because we didn't have access to that information. But I don't know who.
Town doesn't have a record of that.
Okay, then we said that we wouldn't have access to that information is what we said. Yeah, it was quite a discussion. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm gonna send you guys a link for the Island Explorer.
You good at them?
Yeah. Just look it up. Google
There's
is
there aren't
amazing.
many stops in town.
That-
There aren't many stops.
No, it's pretty, yeah, it has the whole map and all the stops in various towns.
Red school. And
Yeah,
Turn around there, yeah. I was thinking of this part.
Yeah, there is an exploreacadia.com website that has Islander, like the Island Explorer routes. I think one of our questions was, we know that there was some reduced service for a couple summers related to COVID. Are these routes that are on the website the reduced service routes, or is this back to full speed? And do folks have a sense of that, or maybe we should reach out to those people directly?
Yeah,
You've got the Bass Harbor Campground. Down.
I think the routes were the same, but they reduced the number of trips.
Got it.
And it had to do everything to do with bus drivers, lack of them. Bed and breakfast.
Oh, bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
No many.
The state license them.
I know,
Yeah.
I made the call,
I don't know.
And what they say.
one. And I don't even think they're operating as a bed and breakfast.
That's Harbor.
No,
That's
Harbor,
Mel's place, but the Africans.
I guess, yeah.
That's Harbor, yeah, it's
It's not, no, it's
not a B and B.
yeah. So they didn't give me the name, they just said there's only one license.
Yeah, he doesn't operate as a B&B.
Yeah.
Hans Point was doing it down there for a while. And they might be.
Yeah. The person, the licensee,
Is that the link you were looking at, Ben? I don't know if you got that yet.
Exploreacadia.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, Route 11 is the Tremont route.
Yeah, that's accurate. And then, yeah.
Okay.
They didn't reduce, they didn't, during COVID, they didn't change the routes, they just reduced the number of trips. But there's a schedule there as well, and that's up to date, and,
Saint Germain.
last summer was,
Yeah.
my sense is they were at capacity, they were doing everything they do.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Well, as many drivers as they had.
Okay.
Better hurry.
My,
Through that.
yeah, okay, fair enough. That's good.
Got it.
So I think,
On the chapters, go ahead.
yeah, I think there were a couple other chapters that we did not get to in December. And we wanted to see if there was a plan to kind of go through those and get comments back to us, over the next month or so. I think it was population and housing.
Population and housing, yeah, that's right.
We have them.
Yeah, we do.
Can we do it at our next meeting?
Does it mess up your schedule if we do it at our next meeting?
Not at all. I was not counting on taking meeting time tonight to do that. But, I know that some of those early chapters got reviewed by, in a subcommittee kind of format versus the committee as a whole kind of format that we went through in December. So I think either one is very useful for us to get, comments directly from this group incorporated. It's just however it's going to work for you.
Next meeting. Let's do next meeting.
So
Okay.
build some time into the agenda to take a look at those two
Yeah.
chapters.
Yeah,
Got it. That works. Okay. Any other comments on the chapter, Sam?
No.
No, I think we've my sense is based on conversations with Sam on a day-to-day basis, the updates were made from that December meeting within a couple weeks of that meeting, and as emails come in, it's been on a little bit of a rolling basis. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, we're trying to stay caught up with the committee's pace here.
Yeah, all those comments from the 12:15 meeting have been incorporated, and yeah, like it's been said, as I'm receiving more comments, those are getting incorporated in the chapters as well.
So the next item on the agenda, if folks are ready to move on, is the mapping update. That is something that will be incorporated into the next draft of these chapters. When you see them again, they're going to be formatted with the maps that go with the text. You saw a lot of placeholders where we had in that draft chapter format. We left placeholders for those maps, and we're working with the Musson Group on getting the final maps done. We got a package of second draft maps last week, and the comments are down to mostly things like legibility, labels, those kinds of things. We did get some review comments, as folks may recall, on location of boat launches, was on the wrong side of the pond. So we've incorporated, some of those things. So I think those are going to be ready for your review as well when the chapters are presented again as formatted draft chapters. So I'll keep calling them drafts until the plan is adopted. But the next draft you see will be looking a lot more like a final document than the draft chapters that we've been presenting, which are kind of workshoppy, drafty chapters that we just want to make sure are factually correct and complete. And now we're moving into the making them look nice and lay out well on the page and have them connected to each other, and thinking about how they relate to the front part of the plan, which is that forward-looking part of the plan. So that is the mapping update. Kind of goes hand in hand with the chapter work.
thank you, Ben.
So at this point, the next item on the agenda is really kind of the looking ahead, kind of scheduling for this group. If folks are ready to move into that portion of the meeting, or if there's any other comments, we can move right in. We, I think, can keep our regular February meeting. That would be February 16th, based on the schedule that we confirmed for the future land use workshop. And our goal is to have some preliminary results kind of pulled together in a draft outline report for the committee to start digesting that meeting at the 16th. And we're also going to want to start pulling together a list of all the required state goals and policies, and integrating in some of the local goals and policies that we've been hearing throughout the process, so that we can start thinking about where those things mesh and make sure that we've got a good complete list, at least a starting point for discussion of local goals and policies that we can start to prioritize over the next couple months. So the next meeting is really going to be kind of taking a breath and looking at what we heard from the Future Land Use Workshop and some of those goals and policies. And then going forward in April, we want to finalize those chapters, present those draft chapters to you that I mentioned, formatted with maps that we can call a final draft, knowing that there still may be some changes needed, and present a prioritized policy list so that it's not just going to be a big undifferentiated laundry list of 7 Excel spreadsheets worth of things to do over the next 10 years, but really start to hone in on what are the 5 or 6 things that Tremont needs to really kind of keep at the front of mind as we continue to make progress over the coming years. And that puts us on track for a May meeting where we are reviewing a first draft of a plan document, which has those chapters, the future land use, the vision, and the goals and policies all together under one cover. So that's a pretty big milestone that we are on track for in May. And I think that matches up with the schedule that we last really looked at back in August. So I don't want to get too far ahead of the committee. I think it was a really good conversation we had early, like do we need to pump the brakes a little bit on this future land use workshop? There's plenty of room in the schedule, and maybe I can screen share it if people want to see it, but what we are looking at is, the official review where the state looks at the draft plan. There will need to be a public hearing that this group holds on the plan before you make a recommendation to either adopt the plan or send it to the council. And honestly, I can't remember talking with this group. It was the intent to have this on a ballot to have a town-wide approval, or is the select board going to approve this on behalf of the community?
It
Has to go to a town
It's a
vote.
town vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are really looking at, several months of state review, fine tuning revisions after we have that draft plan in May. But that leaves plenty of room to have, something that people can look at in the September, October timeframe ahead of a November meeting, potentially. So I feel good about the schedule, but I also don't want to just keep charging ahead if there are things we need to slow down and be thoughtful about. I think the schedule can accommodate those things. So I appreciate the chance to have a conversation like we did earlier tonight.
Is it scheduled to be on the town meeting for 2024?
I think we do a ballot in 2020, in November.
So yeah, this is a completely local decision, how the plan gets accepted by the community. And we want to help facilitate that and be there for that process. So we can, either talk a little bit about it tonight, or if there's an expectation at this point for, I had presumed a November ballot, but it might be a Springtown meeting or something like that.
I always presumed it was town meeting. That's what it voted on before.
Right, well, it doesn't have to be, but it has to be voted on at a town meeting of one kind or another. And of course, there's a public hearing process that you have to go through before it ever gets on the ballot. So how that all works out in the timeline, I don't know, but certainly shooting for November would be good.
Yeah, and I can talk to Jesse, and it's been so long since I've looked at the Gantt chart. I don't even remember what our initial target was.
I know selectmen kind of need to have something by August.
Yeah.
It's like with us on the planning board and the weekly rental.
So we'll keep making good progress, and we can kind of fine tune some of those details and what that might mean for the project schedule. But I think that the key takeaway, what I wanted to let you know is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know that you guys have been working on this longer than we have, but we're making good progress, and I feel like we're on track to get you what we said we were going to do. And I just don't want to be so focused on the schedule on my end. I think this is something I have a tendency to do, to just kind of keep charting. We have a schedule that we set 18 months ago, and we must keep marching forward. Just, I wanted to reflect and maybe even remind myself that there is some room in this process to slow down a little bit and be thoughtful where we need to. So with that being said, that's the end of the agenda that I had prepared for tonight's meeting. I'm not sure if there's anything from the community or anything that the folks want to share with us at this point, or share with each other about what people are hearing or what we might need to keep in mind as we keep moving forward.
Good. Everyone's good. I think we're good.
Great.
Do you know that there's the select board and the planning board are working on land-based housing, vacation rentals? We've been asked to, on the planning board, to come up with a proposal, something sort of to look at regulating or changing our ordinance or something. We don't know what exactly we're doing yet.
Yeah. Noel Musson at the Musson Group had given me a heads up that this is something that is, actively being worked on. So I'm not sure, besides being aware of it, I think, that's important. But if there's, specifics that come out of that work that we want to either, support in the recommendations that come out of this effort, then that's certainly on the table.
I don't think you're going to get anything concrete probably before this is pretty much wrapped up. I think there may be some suggested stuff, but again, whatever's going to happen is going to go to the voters before it's approved.
Right, but it seems, especially in the housing chapter, to at least mention like where we are in this. We're in a very different place now than we were in 2011 in thinking about housing as it relates to weekly rentals.
It was a concern in 2001.
It was a concern?
Yeah.
Yeah. I should go back and look and see. Do you remember what?
Well, maybe I'm thinking of, 2001, when they talked about. Not
Affordable housing.
housing.
I didn't think there were weekly rental thing.
No, it wasn't the week. Young people being able to get a.
Correct, right. So affordable housing, weekly rentals is related to that, but also not just about, not only about affordable housing, but many things. But if you're in the loop with Noel, that's
Yep. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Motion to set date
for the next meeting, motion for the next meeting.
We need to set one for February 2nd.
We've already done that,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
February 16th, I think is the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to set the date for our next regular meeting as February 16th. 5:30 right here in Harvey Kelly Meeting Room in the town office.
Second. All in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Thanks a lot, Ben. Thanks, Sam.
All right.
Thank you.
when you said second, it wasn't clear.
Whether I was doing it, I